Um, it is a common misconception in Western meditation that, in fact, let us expand that. It's a common misconception in Western Buddhism. And I define Western Buddhism is all of the Buddhism that has been accumulated and learned by Western people that did not come from reliable sources. In other words, Western Buddhism is basically the blind leading the blind. And that there have been occasions when some sighted people led some blind people around for a short period of time, but that doesn't mean then that those blind people who were led around a bit are now ready to lead other blind people. So, from that perspective, let's talk about the actual teachings and the practices of the Buddha and how they have gotten confused. And that the actual teachings of the Buddha have to do with freeing the mind, going off in getting into seclusion, getting comfortable, and start observing the mind and making some changes. This is the Four Noble Truths, this is the Eightfold Noble Path, and this is the practice of Ānāpānasati. Now, let's fast forward into the 1950s when basically you could even go so far as to start in the time of Alexander the Great, who brought form artistry, form sculpture, and artistry like that into the Asian world, into India. And before the time of that invasion, the time of the soap, we're talking about 300 BC now, in 250 BC time period, which would be 100 to 150 years after the time of the Buddha. In the time of the Buddha, there were three symbols. There was the Bodhi leaf, there was the Dhamma chakra, or the wheel, that has 8 spokes when it's the Eightfold Noble Path and has 12 spokes when it's dependent origination. And the third was the image of a tree with a seat under it, just like a worn down place where people were sitting under the tree. It wasn't until then, after Ashoka's time, that the idea of a sitting Buddha and a sitting Buddha image ever came up. And that seems to be those images of a sitting Buddha has greatly influenced Western people. The next thing that happened was in the 1950s when the Burmese government allowed one of their high officials, U Ba Khin, to take his accountants. This was, by the way, the Burmese government's version of the Treasury Department, to allow those accountants some time for practice. And then Goenka got with U Ba Khin, and things went in that direction. So now, from those days of 70 years ago, Western Buddhism has come to understand that Buddhism is sitting in a particular posture, in a particular place, for a particular period of time, called a retreat or whatever like that. And that things have gone very far off with that. That in fact, the actual practice of Ānāpānasati has words built into it that indicate bodily comfort, having the body sitting at ease, at rest. And yet Western Buddhism has this idea of sitting for a long period of time, doing some sort of struggle, some sort of strong determination system, sitting some sort of endurance, and thinking that there's going to be some value in that. And so Westerners then approach meditation the same way that they approach every other job, like joining the army and doing boot camp. That in fact, some meditation retreats feel like a boot camp rather than a pleasure leisure resort, which is exactly what it's supposed to be. So in many cases, the idea that Westerners get about Buddhism is exactly opposite of what the actual teachings of the Buddha are. Now, when you begin to talk about pain, that indicates that the sitting postures have become important. That in fact, the only real posture that's important or the important parts of the posture is that it's stable, that you're not going to fall over. Okay, especially stable when the body needs to be stable, like perhaps when it's falling asleep or jerking around or something like this. But any posture that's stable will do. Now, from India, there's a lot of different sitting postures that have become synonymous with Buddhism, like the Burmese posture, the half Burmese posture, the lotus posture, the half lotus posture, the Zen postures, and other things like this. All of those postures were designed in a culture that was more or less tropical, except for the Zen. Everything else was tropical, utilizing the fact that people did sit on the ground, sit on the floor commonly. To where in Western culture, the child is picked up off the floor before he's 2 years old and put into a high chair. Then he sits at a desk when he's 6 years old in school, and he never gets around to sitting back down on the floor, which takes particular muscles in particular ways. And so the postures that we're in actually have very little or nothing to do with the practice of meditation, other than, let us say, ignorant associations. And Westerns would probably do better by sitting in a chair than sitting on the floor, because now they're having to deal with something that they haven't dealt with before. Or another possibility is that when you begin to watch television or eat your food, sit on the floor. Spend a lot of time on the floor so that you can get your body back used to being on the floor, and not call sitting on the floor anything to do with meditation. Sitting on the floor is just sitting on the floor. Right? And in that regard, the word meditation is actually a problematic word. The word meditation doesn't appear anywhere in any sutta. What did the Buddha practice then? What did he recommend? He recommended Ānāpānasati, and that was the only practice that he recommended. When Bhikkhu Buddhadasa made that statement back in the 30s or 40s, he caught attention, and so there was some research done. Rather than just listening to the traditions that have been built up, mostly around later literature like the Visuddhimagga, Zempirimagga, Abhidhamma, commentaries, and all of that, which is where people go. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa went back to the suttas, which is the normal place for ones who were interested in the actual teachings of the Buddha to go, rather than to the later commentary. And it's in the later commentary where you find the idea of there's 40 meditations, but the Buddha actually only taught one. And like I said, that caused the literature search by all of the scholars of Buddhism in Thailand. And guess what? He was proven correctly that the Buddha only taught one meditation. That in fact, what is listed in the Satipatthana Sutta, he stopped doing that, the terminal grounds. In that group of 40 different meditations, you also have metta practice and the jhana practice, and that the Buddha does not teach the jhana practice per se. He teaches Ānāpānasati, and the results of Ānāpānasati is getting the mind fit for work, which means getting it into the jhana. So another one was the metta meditations, and yet we have sutras that show that the metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha practice was practiced by others, including some of those other groups of people who then became students of the Buddha, continued to practice metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha as an actual practice. And the Buddha then mentions that in the Ānāpānasati Sutta. Those people who are doing this do the Ānāpānasati practice because it's the one who gives great fruit, great benefit. But the Ānāpānasati practice doesn't have anything to do with posture, a sitting posture. That in fact, Ānāpānasati can be practiced in all of the four normally known postures: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. Now, in the sitting and the lying down posture, there's actually quite a lot of postures in there. The reclining posture, for instance, somewhere between sitting and lying, like on a divan or a couch or something, would be a kind of a half reclining posture. But the point that we're starting to make is that we need to get the body comfortable. We practice Ānāpānasati for the body getting comfortable, not putting it in particular postures and then keeping those postures until the blood circulation breaks down, until the nerves get pinched, until the knees start to hurt. That in fact, I know of quite a number of people who were really, really super dedicated to their practice enough to become monks, who then destroyed their ability to sit. The first that I knew of was Kantipalo, who was an Australian monk. The next one that I know of is a German monk who stayed at Wat Mahatat, but I've forgotten his name, unfortunately. Another one is a very famous monk, Vila-Maramsi. He can't sit because he's done too much damage to his knees by trying to sit on the floor, so he no longer can sit on the floor. And there's also a monk named Subato, who is now living in Australia, and that he does not want to stay at for instance, Wat Suanok, because he can't sit with the other monks, because he was working too hard at that sitting and actually then damaged his legs. And so he carries around a doctor's certificate saying, don't make this monk sit on the floor. Right? So there's grave dangers. Your body is giving you a message. It's telling you, don't do that. Don't put your body in pain. And it's not the practice of the Buddha either, but it seems to be something that's gotten stuck into Western mentality, that everything to do with the teaching of the Buddha has to do with sitting in certain postures, because look at all the statues that we see all over. But the statues didn't exist in the time of the Buddha. That happened 150 to 100 to 150 years after the time of the Buddha. So this is my introduction now, that what we need to do is find a comfortable posture that you can sit in for a little while.
So I just want to interject. When I sit, because I'll generally sit on a Zafu Burmese style, and the pain primarily is in the muscles. It's not so much in the joints, or at least there's not really persistent pain there. And I've had sits where the pain has completely disappeared, for extended periods. So it's...
Well, here's a question. When the pain does appear, what do you do?
I try to I mean, I try to just relax into it. So I try to just, not tense up my muscles, not tense up other parts of my bodies. Usually when there's pain,
But you don't change your posture.
no, not typically. I mean,
Okay. I would highly recommend that you listen to your legs and change your posture. Stand up, in fact.
mm,
Walk around a bit, or at least stretch your legs to the side or whatever like that. I know that there's a lot of, let us say, Asian customs
mhm.
about pointing your feet to the front, but there's no reason when you're sitting at home to have any such rules as that. And also, even if you stretch out your legs in a meditation hall around other people, you can stretch them out to the side. But a better thing to do would be to stand up, maybe even walk around a little bit. This would be what's recommended. Also, you can practice not sitting in a particular posture. Find other postures
I've
to practice.
I've tried a bunch of different postures, and I've had different. I meditated in a chair for a while, and that's what my problem with the chair. Well, I eventually found a posture with the chair with enough supports where it felt there wasn't pain, but it wasn't very stable. So I think stability is sort of the issue, and besides that, getting kind of neck and shoulder pain if I'm slouching forward. So trying to find a posture that's sustainable in a chair has also been. So I'm wondering what your recommendations are for something like that. Um,
Well, one of the things that the Buddha does recommend is to sit upright. And
mhm,
there's good physics reasons for that. And that's gravity. Okay. That if you are sitting and bent over, then the gravity is going to be pulling you down this way. If you're sitting up straight, then the gravity is pulling you straight down.
right.
Okay. It's very, very much like a tall building. That if the foundation, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you don't know how much money they've spent more money in the past 100 years trying to keep the Tower of Pisa continuing to lean than the thing cost in the first place. And so now that it's leaning, they have to keep shoring it up and shoring it up and shoring it up. But they're afraid to put it upright like it ought to be because then they would lose the tourist attraction.
Yeah, right.
Okay. But with us, we can, in fact, do that. There are little techniques that we can use. One is imagine that there is a cord or a rope or something that's pulling you straight up. And so you sit up just a little bit, and then imagine that cord is cut, and then you can relax just a little and come back down to where you're sitting up straight.
Hmm.
That's the way to practice, is to get the body erect in your sitting posture, and whether or not you're leaning against the wall to get that erectness. In fact, sitting against the wall and leaning against the wall will help you understand what sitting straight is. And yet many people say, oh, no, you're not supposed to sit up against the wall. You're supposed to go sit out there like all the other stone statues that are in such misery, and you be in misery too, just like everybody else. That's our practice here. Okay. But that's not the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha's teachings is to have, in fact, the four first steps of Ānāpānasati is to uh, cultivate sati, to remember each breath is a long in breath, and to remember that each breath is a long out breath, not an ordinary breath, not a shallow breath, but we continue to take long, deep breaths. But in fact, one of the things that you can do as you're breathing in long is you can stretch up and make sure that you're sitting correctly. And as you breathe out, you relax and you let it sit down just a little bit. So you can see maybe that the head is going up a half an inch on the in breath and going back down that half an inch on the out breath. All right. Now, the next step of Ānāpānasati, step 3, is the knowledge of the body, to understand the body. We get to that understanding through the breathing. And so we notice the touch of the cloth, we notice the winds, we notice all kinds of touching sensations that are experienced. You can feel them in the hands, you can feel them in the legs, and we get really in touch with the body. This third step, if it's done in an overly stylized way, in an overly organized way, would be the way that Goenka teaches of the scanning. But we don't have to do the scanning. That's just an organized way of doing it. The more natural way to do it is one by one as they occur. Whatever sensations present themselves to you from the body, pay attention to that. But pay attention to it with the understanding of relaxing the body. That in fact you did make mention of muscle tensions, that in fact from the neck up, people will give themselves headaches, strain, they will tighten the head muscles, but they also will give themselves headaches because of the muscle tensions that are in the neck. And also, this is related to feelings in the sense that when we are angry or afraid or uptight, we will tense up. And so the step of 3 of Ānāpānasati is to getting to know this, so that in fact, if you do recognize that you have muscle tension, then do something to relax it. Then they say, keep your hands still. No, you can actually go help your step 3 by using your hands, finding out where the neck tensions and all of that tension is, and give yourself a bit of a massage and relax.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. But the whole idea is step 4 with the body is to relax the body. And strong determination sittings don't get people relaxed. Sitting for an hour and a half or 2 hours doesn't relax the body. However, if someone has gotten the art of having their body relaxed, then they can sit comfortably for an hour or 2. But that's not a goal. That's just kind of a side point or a side outcome. The question is the mind relaxed? And the answer is, well, the mind's probably a little more relaxed than it would have been if the body was all tensed up. But being competitive in our society, we look at how long can you sit as some sort of goal that you can use to prove that you're better meditator than other people. And that's something that is quite common in the West, is competitive meditation. They ought to make it an Olympic event. How long can you sit still? And so taking a whole different frame of reference to the practice of Ānāpānasati is often given when students recognize step 4 is to relax the body. How can you relax the body when it's in pain? How can you be in comfort when the body is in pain? That in fact, that's part of the definition of the word sukha, and sukha is number 6 on the items of the list of Ānāpānasati, is to practice sukha, make it a skill to be developed. And what are the aspects of sukha? In the Pali Dictionary, safety, security, comfort, and satisfaction. If your body is uncomfortable, no one's going to be satisfied with their body uncomfortable. The body can't be comfortable when you're not in a state of security. That if we feel like that there is something wrong, then we are naturally going to be tensed up. And then we carry that tension around with us. And the time that we should be spending in Ānāpānasati would be then to find those tensions and relax them. To relax the body, to get the body comfortable, to get the mind in a state of feeling safe and secure and comfortable, will then give the body or the mind the ability to then become satisfied.
So,
but if we're not, go ahead.
So how do you differentiate between discomfort that you should stay with and not like, get up or do a different posture and instead relax, and discomfort or pain that you need to really shift position or stretch out or is there not a distinction between those two?
I would say that there is not, but I'm not quite sure of your question yet. Let's discuss it a little bit in the sense that there are many different kinds of pain. One kind of pain would be a broken arm. I use broken arms because I've had some and other broken bones. And over time of a 6-week to 3-month period, depending upon the, let us say, the technique of the person who has the broken arm, that if he can let the arm rest, let the arm relax. That's the whole point about putting it in a splint. Putting a cast on it is to hold the arm still. Guess what? If that kid who has the broken arm still wants to write with his hand, play the piano, play the violin, or carry things around with that hand, by using that hand, the muscles in the arm keep moving, which keeps unsetting the bone. And that's why there's a lot of pain in a broken arm, is because the kid won't take the doctor's orders, stop using your hand. In fact, good doctors may, in fact, put the cast all the way into the hand so that the hand can't be used, so that the arm, the forearm, could heal. That's another way of looking at it is that if you've got chronic pain or that you've got a form of an injury, we need to take care of that injury as an injury. We need to set an arm that's broken. We need to, if there's mosquito bites, the danger is that people will scratch the mosquito bites, making it worse. The right thing to do with a mosquito bite that itches is to put an ointment on it, to rub in an ointment. Now, that's actually an important clue about what the Buddha talks about is having the right medicines. Having just enough of the right medicines, like an ointment, will keep us from scratching. So if you've got tension in the neck and the meditator sits there with more and more tension, he's going to feel it and complain about it. Oh, I have headaches, my back hurts, my neck hurts, and everything like this, because they're not doing the things that they need to help alleviate the tension and let the body rest. And so sitting for long periods of time puts the body in tension, and then the student is saying, I'm not going to let this body rest. I'm going to put in 2 hours of meditation because I'm a tough dude. Okay. And this mentality, I actually think, is let us say, promoted by people who don't understand the value of Goenka's technique of strong determination sitting, partly because he introduces it way too early. And what I mean way too early is that he does this in like day 6 or 7 of a 10-day course, where you have people who have never done any practice at all. And after they've sitting for a long time in pain and gotten their body really tired and stiff and whatever, now they're introducing the strong determination sitting, right? This is not good help. It's not good health mentally, and it's not good health for the body. But this is what Westerners think meditation is all about. And this is why there's so much failure. That in fact, we need to start looking at what we're doing with the intention of making a change, making a fix. This is important, especially with the mind, that we have to get the body comfortable. And then as we're breathing in and out, the mind will wander away. And where it will wander to is often into unwholesome places. And so when the student recognizes that the mind has wandered away into unwholesome places, he then only wakes up enough to see that he is in an unwholesome place, and he continues with that unwholesomeness. We actually have to wake up quite a lot. Goenka talks about it in the sense that when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. But that takes a whole lot of waking up. That in fact, we can wake up and not do anything, or even wake up and then start practicing even worse. An example of that is that a loud noise or a flash of light will bring people back into the present moment. But it may also bring them back in the present moment with great trepidation and fear because of the noise, right? That this is not the kind of in the present moment waking up that we're doing. It's, let us say, a skill to be developed as to how strong the waking up is. If the waking up is really, really strong, then there's very little effort that's needed. But if our waking up is very weak, then it will take a lot of effort. An example will be that when the student's mind wanders away from the breath and he recognizes that, instead of starting again, he'll have thoughts like, oh, I shouldn't have let my mind wander away from the breath. Oh, this meditation is really hard. Oh, I can't do it. Oh, maybe the instructions are bad. Maybe the teacher is bad. Maybe this whole Buddhism thing is a bunch of crap. You see what's happening in the mind, right? Because the mind is still in an unwholesome state. We need to make the change to get the mind out of the unwholesome state. And we need to do as much as we can to prevent the mind from ever getting into an unwholesome state. And sitting too long in a particular posture is almost guaranteed to get the mind in an unwholesome state. Not only that, but getting the mind then into the unwholesome state, we don't like it, and so we kind of shut down. With that, the mind gets really dull in those later times of the meditation after 45 minutes or something like that. And that's when all of the really strange things happen, that people are thinking that this is what practicing meditation is good for, is to give you strange experiences. No, you're getting those strange experiences because the mind's not functioning properly. It's tired now. And so we'll have past life experiences, or we'll have great deep insights that go nowhere, but we think that they're really profound or whatever like that. But the real value of the practice is to keep coming back and coming back and coming back to this present moment in a wholesome way. And so we can recognize that, oh, I need to make a change. I need to stand up and move around, get the mind back fresh again, take some deep breaths, and then start again.
So, how do you recommend structuring, I guess, so yeah, if I have a typical sit, maybe that's 45 minutes or something, there'll be some point where it's like the meditation's getting better and better, but then there's some turning point where sitting still for so long, let's say 35 minutes in, that becomes a bigger hindrance to the meditation. So what you're saying is, something at that point should be done about it. Correct? Um,
Oh, you're back. Okay, good.
Sorry, yeah, I don't know what happened. So what I was saying is like, let's say I want to practice meditation and I start sitting and I go and, however long it goes before it's uncomfortable or there's pain or something, or, as it starts to come up.
That's already too long.
Okay, already, so it starts to come up, things are not, there's tension, and just relaxing it isn't doing anything. So I'm coming up and I'm standing or walking or, doing something else, right? Um, I guess my question is, I don't know, maybe this is just a Western thing, doing retreats like this where you're meditating so long. But it's like I can't imagine still even alternating sitting and walking or shifting in positions, not having discomfort or not having pain, just
Precisely.
because you're doing something for so long. But I don't know, maybe that's a fixed way of seeing things.
Well, we um, we mistake duration from repetitiveness. That what we're actually practicing, or should be practicing, knowingly practice, is to do something wholesome over and over and over again. The over and over and over again of doing something wholesome gets rotted away in the Western mind into endurance. And we're not intending to do anything with endurance. We're intending to do things repetitively, wholesomely. So, one of the things that I have recommended to students for many, many years now, and it seems to be getting good results, is to not sit so long. And here's the reason and the rationale behind that, and that is that it takes a focused mind to have a good long attention span. That humanity in general only has an attention span of about 20 minutes. This has been measured, the psychologists know this and whatnot like that. And having longer classes does not help that. This is why first grade teachers, even in an hour of a class, between the classes, the bells ring or whatnot like that, the teachers need to actually interrupt that quicker, to have each hour doing 2 or 3 things to keep the students so that they can stay with her. And oftentimes, even the teachers themselves don't have a long attention span. That in fact, those monks who were practicing correctly wind up the attention span increases for a long period of time, increases longer and longer because of correct practice. But those who were sitting for long periods of time don't increase their attention span. The attention span is only about 20 minutes at best. And so, in an hour sitting, most of that time, 2/3 of your time, is going to be wasted because our attention span is not that short or not that long. What we need to do now is recognize that and put our practice within our attention span, so that we're actually going to get results. That's another reason why a lot of people say, oh, well, I can't get anything done until after about 45 minutes. Well, the reason for that is because you've given yourself an hour, and now you can waste 45 minutes and then do something for 15 minutes. Why don't we just stop with that 45-minute stuff and start practicing correctly right away? That in fact, if you start practicing immediately to get the unwholesome thoughts out of the mind, you can get yourself into a nice, beautiful state within 5 to 10 minutes. There's no reason for sitting for an hour. But we need to practice often, repetition, over and over and over again. For this reason, it is recommended that if you're going to be devoting an hour, let us say, every day to your meditation, to break that up into 6 10-minute sittings, so that each 10-minute sitting you're going to actually get benefit.
Mm. Okay.
To actually get benefit in 10 minutes, to sit there and get your mind fixed, get it functioning correctly, getting wholesome thoughts in, getting the breathing going, getting the body relaxed. Oh, wow, how nice this is. And then we can go off and do something else for a little while, and then come back a couple of 3 hours later and practice it again, another 10 minutes, just to sit and clear the mind of all the unwholesome thoughts, bring in wholesome thoughts. Wow, this is nice, no place to go, nothing to do for the next 10 minutes. I can just sit here and chill. And so this is the new way of practicing. To get started every day, you can do this about 6 times. The first time to do it is early in the morning, just when you wake up. That in fact, waking up out of bed in the morning is a good, let us say, metaphor or analogy. And that is that what happens when you first wake up in the morning? What's the very first thing that happens? We're talking about within the first 5 seconds. What happens? Or another question would be, what is waking up?
Yeah, I mean, you're coming out of a state of relaxation. It's like,
No, let us not talk about it coming out of something. What you're actually coming out of is complete ignorance. Total ignorance is what you're coming out of. Okay, so what is waking up at all anyway? The first thing that happens is that we are awake, and we know that we're awake. We're conscious because we're conscious of some sort of sensory input. We don't wake up immediately in the dream. We wake up coming out of the dream into reality. It could be the bed sheets, the way that they move. It could be the pillow that we come awake to first. It could be a light that's shining, a noise we hear, but it is something that brings us into sensory awareness.
mm-hmm.
That's what wakes us up. Okay. The next point, though, is that no one immediately gets up out of bed. We all hang around, linger around in this sort of in-between state of being asleep and being awake. But if you actually get out of bed and start walking, say towards the bathroom or towards the door or finding something to put on or whatever like that, that would then be called awaken up or fully awake. So let's look at the difference between being in the bed and just kind of waking up, as opposed to actually getting up, is sati. There's 2 kinds of sati there. The sati of initially waking up, and then the sati of actually remembering to get up out of bed. And it's that second kind of sati that we're actually developing, so that when a noise happens, or that we become aware that our mind has wandered away from the breath, we will stay in that hindrance, we'll stay in that wholesome state of mind until we wake up a little more to recognize I've got to get out of that state of mind. I've got to get out of this bed that was so uncomfortable that it woke me up. All right, so the waking up then means that we got 2 stages of waking up. The waking up into sense consciousness, or to be here now, and then the second waking up is the ability to take an effort to do something about it. This is why sati and right effort and right investigation, according to the Buddha in the sutta, run and circle around each other. They work together like that, okay? And so enough right effort is needed to actually remove the unwholesome thoughts that are in the mind. In the case of bodily pain, we need to wake up enough to move the body to alleviate the pain, rather than just hating it, to actually do something about it. Okay. So, along with that, we can say, well, wait a minute, that gives now an opportunity to practice. Between the time that I'm getting up out of bed and the time before that, which was being awake, being in bed, what are we going to do with that period of time? In fact, many of us will have an alarm for a snooze, a snooze alarm, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Well, there you go. That's our meditation time. So as soon as we wake up in the morning, the very first thing that we're going to start doing now is practicing Ānāpānasati by taking a deep breath and having a wholesome thought, such as, wow, I'm so glad that I'm awake. And now I can take a deep breath. Maybe I can stretch the body and feel really good. This is going to be a great day. Okay, and so we start having some really, really wholesome thoughts so that by the time we have a thought about, oh, I need to get up and go do something, we've already gotten the mind in a very good, happy state. We've brought it up to the ability to meet the day like a champion, as opposed to being a victim of the day, the way that most children, when they wake up, oh, I don't want to get up. Oh, I feel so tired. Oh, I don't want to go to school today. Oh, poor me. Well, that's what we do when we wake up every morning. So now we're going to wake up and change that into a practice of, let's get the mind in gear. Let's get it wholesome. Let's get some happy thoughts going. And do that for about 5 or 10 minutes. Get up. Ready to go now. Got some breath. Got an attitude. Let's go. All right. Then another time that we can do it is exactly opposite of that, and that is when we lay down at night. Most people lay down with the idea, oh, I've got to go to sleep. Oh, I've got to get to sleep. That our society tells us we've got to have 8 hours of sleep and all of that kind of stuff. You've heard it. And so people will say things like, oh, I've got to get up in the morning because I've got a big day tomorrow. Or I've got a test to take. Or I've got this, that, or the other thing. And so there they are laying in bed thinking about tomorrow and not going to sleep. Then they get worried. Then they call it insomnia. There's a better practice, Ānāpānasati. So we lay down in bed with the idea, wow, this feels so comfortable. Oh, I feel so relaxed. And I got no place to go and nothing to do for the next 8 hours. I could just lay here and just wallow in joy and happiness. And I don't have to have a thought about tomorrow at all. I can just lay here and feel good. I can lay here and take a deep breath and, oh, everything is okay. Everything is fine. No place to go, nothing to do. And the sheets are nice. Okay. So now that's 2 times that we can practice for 10 or 15 minutes. In both cases, you may not, in fact, get to practice that for 15 minutes when you're going to sleep at night. You may find yourself going to sleep within 5 minutes because you're just so relaxed, no worries, nothing to think about, and everything is cool. Okay. So that means now we only have to find 4 other times in the day. One would be at lunch, another would be at the breaks, another would be when we time off. It's actually, I don't know what your schedule is, but you can figure it out for yourself. A good time to practice is when you're riding a public transportation. An even better time to practice is when you're driving, to intentionally keep your mind and your eye on the road. And yet most people don't do that. We have a very, very bad history, humans, of driving cars because we only pay attention to the driving of the car the first year that we're learning how to drive. After that, we let it go on to automatic pilot, and we don't bother much looking at where we're going. We have conversations. We're on the cell phone. Some of us are even texting. Some of us eat food. Others are yelling at the kids in the back seat. And there's all kinds of possibilities for not paying attention to where we're going. So when we're driving a car, that means that we're intending to watch the hands. What are the hands doing? Watch the feet. Notice what the feet are doing. Watch the road. Notice the side things. Watching what's going on. This is a really good way of practicing Ānāpānasati, is when you're driving, knowing that if you stop practicing Ānāpānasati, you could be dead within 10 seconds.
So I have a
Not
question.
much of where you going, huh?
So I have a question about that actually about Ānāpānasati and practicing it outside of like a sit or a walk or like a formal walk or something. I've done some practices more like body awareness stuff. Let's say I'm making food or I'm driving or I'm sitting watching TV or something like that. I mean that's not a good example, but like um, sometimes if there's like a lot going on, it's hard to how much are you with the breath and how much is this just being mindful kind of what you're doing, and then also where does the wholesome
I
thoughts come
would
in
go so
and
far as to say generally that's an unwholesome question to ask. And that a more wholesome question to ask would be, wakey, wakey, look at what you're doing right now. To remember to wake up. Now, when we're practicing this 6 times a day in a particular setting, that's going to help us start to remember to start practicing in between. If we sit for just 1 hour a day for a long period of time, that leaves us 23 hours with hindrances. And we have been doing hindrances for the past number of years. And so 1 hour of meditation a day is going to be really, really slow. We need to actually speed that up by practicing more frequently, repeating things on a wholesome level more often. Get in the habit of, by practicing quite often, to get my mind back out of the hindrances, work to do, uh, problems to solve, people's faces to fix, because I didn't like the words that came out. This is kind of thing. Get our mind away from that into right now, everything is okay. Right now, everything is all right. Right now, this is a really good breath. Let's be in the present moment with um, a mind that is fit for experiencing this present moment.
so I guess specifically what I meant was when you say Ānāpānasati, taking it's like step one, noticing a long breath in and a long breath out, or a short breath in and a short
Not
breath
just
out.
noticing, intentionally taking it.
Okay, so intentionally taking it. So when I'm driving, and you're saying doing the Ānāpānasati, it's doing that, intentionally breathing in long, intentionally breathing out long.
Breathing out and intentionally looking at the road.
Yeah.
Intentionally looking at the road. Not just that it's always just kind of part of the driving
Right.
and I'll do a bit, but we intentionally are using the eye door to look at the road. Now, one of the things may happen with that is that we can begin to play with how far down the road am I going to look and what does encompass the road itself. In other words, billboards are not part of the road, so we don't have to pay anything attention to billboards. Fencing along the highway is not part of the road, but people who are likely parked in cars who are going to open the doors, that's part of the road. So we have to watch the cars that are in the road. We have to see how far down the road that we can get. Now, what I'm about to say actually has more to do with, uh, let us say, habits of teenagers than it does habits of Ānāpānasati. But the habits of the teenagers who were racing their cars, there's a rule, and that is that the further down the road you can see, the faster you can go. And when you can't see down the road at all, like there's a great big truck in front of you, you can't see anything in front of you. You got to not be behind the truck. That's especially true for the motorcycles. You got to get out so you can see. And one of the ways of doing that is by dropping back to get a perspective, okay, to go slower because we can't see. This is also something that we can add back into Ānāpānasati with the idea that I'm going to keep my eye on the road and I'm going to find out how far down the road I can see clearly. I can begin to see things that are happening down the road so that when I get it, I'll be there So we're talking about actually in a way of learning to see the future, which is another way of saying learning trajectories. Just like a young child who is thrown a handball, a baseball, or a plastic ball, they can't catch it because they don't have the hand-eye coordination. Once we gain some skill of hand-eye coordination, then we can catch that ball with our hand because we can see it moving and we can figure out where it's going to be when it gets close to me, right? We can then apply that same mentality to the road. What's the road going to be like 3 seconds from now when I get there? Or what's the road going to be like 4 seconds from now when I get way down there? And if it's free, I can do that 4 seconds in 3 seconds. I can speed up because I can see what's going on, as opposed to I should slow down because I don't know what's happening very well. I can't see very well. And so this is just one point that we're making about the driving, because if you start practicing Ānāpānasati while driving, you will become a better driver, and you will actually be better at Ānāpānasati also.
So you're doing both. You have the intention, like when you're sitting, it's just the breath, but like when you're doing other things, it's the breath and the thing you're doing, both in awareness.
Right. Back and forth, mixed together.
Gotcha.
All right. So with that, we can actually say that there are some things that are going to be highly intellectual, like writing emails. I would actually then, knowing that we have a choice, let's get our mind into a really, really good state before we write the email. And then we can write the email when we're in a really good state, as opposed to start writing the email when we're in a bad mood and then try to get ourselves into a good mood while we're writing the email is not a wise idea. It's better to start when we're already in a good state of mind, a wholesome state. And so not only that, but you will benefit from that greatly. If you sit for an hour or two in meditation, you might be able during that hour to get yourself into a good state. But by the end of the meditation, because of the leg pain and other stuff like that, you've gotten yourself into a state of discomfort and dissatisfaction. If we practice it this way, you bring yourself into a great deal of state of satisfaction and contentness and pleasure and comfort and satisfaction, and then stop at that high note. Go off and do something. And by doing it many times throughout the day, that will help brighten your day. Wouldn't you rather have, instead of one high moment followed by the rest of the hour of meditation, you break that up and have 6 or 7 high points every day, followed by another high point or so. So we need to break our ideas about what Western meditation has about meditation and figuring out that what the Buddha is talking about is to wake up and to make a change, to change the mind out of the unwholesome thoughts that it was in and change it into wholesome thoughts. And that's how we get ourselves, by having wholesome thoughts, by having thoughts of comfort, by having thoughts of safety, by having thoughts of security, by having thoughts of satisfaction, we begin to feel safe and feel secure and feel comfortable and feel satisfied. And if we do that over and over and over and over again, the 4th item begins to build. The samma sankappa, the right intention. And the right intention is, rather than feeling like a victim who has some job to do, we're feeling like a champion that has a toy to play with. We change our attitude from being the attitude of a victim who needs something like meditation into the champion who's enjoying the benefits of the meditation. This is the change of attitude. This is a really important quality of the Eightfold Noble Path, is to get ourselves into a state of sutta, get ourselves into a state that is not dukkha at all. Sukha is, in fact, exactly opposite to dukkha. It is in the Pali. It's that way in the Thai language, and it's that way even in the language of Gujarati. I don't know all the Indian languages, but I've got one student who says yes, and even in my parents' native language of Gujarati, that dukkhi and sukhi are opposites. So if you got yourself into a state of sukha, that means that where's the dukkha? You're out of it right now. Nothing magical, nothing mystical. If you're in a good mood, you're just not in a bad mood. So we have to practice getting ourselves into the good mood of being a champion, being a winner. Practicing that 6 or 7 times a day will gain great benefit.
Interesting. Yeah. For someone who has more time to practice, would more frequency be better, or would going longer than 10 minutes, or just kind of going again by
I would
feel?
say more frequently would be the way to go
Yeah.
rather than longevity.
Yeah. And trying to have like a continuity between, like, so,
That's what we're actually going for.
yeah,
Is that if you do this 6 times a day, you will begin to build up continuity between your practices. If you only practice once a day, you're not going to be able to develop that continuity.
right. I definitely, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a danger in that, in the sense that many students, once they get the idea of doing it 6 times a day, they begin to think, oh, I should be doing it all the time. And they can't do it all the time. And so now they're fussing at themselves because they can't do it all the time, and they're back to square one again. Right? So let's become aware of that you're not trying to do this all the time. You're doing it first in a schedule, and then later congratulate yourself in between when you remember, rather than fussing at yourself when you don't.
Right.
Congratulate, congratulate, nourish, nurture. This is what we're working on. We spent far too much time being critical, wanting something special out of meditation, trying to get some value from it, instead of just taking your value right now.
Well, I was going to say
So
something.
coming out of critical mind into the nurturing mind, this is what we're looking for. Practicing that several times a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember I did like a 10-minute sit a week ago. It's just I don't know, I was really anxious or something. All I did was 10 minutes, and I was amazed by how much changed in 10 minutes. I was like, whoa, yeah. So I could see doing that multiple times, um, would be helpful. Okay.
All right. Well, let's finish this talk here and give you a chance to rearrange your schedule a bit
Mm-hmm.
so that you can rearrange your mind a whole lot.
Yeah, that sounds good. I just wanted to say last session I mentioned practicing. It's a completely different topic, but looking for somewhere to practice maybe in Thailand. I don't know if you want to. We can do it on another call if this is a separate.
Yes, let's do that on another call.
Okay.
I will say that things are opening up, but we can talk about your situation and other things like that at a later time. But right now, what I'm teaching you right now, you can practice right where you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go someplace to do something in order to practice. You've got all the equipment you need. You got the body, you got your breath, you got your mind, you got the moment. Let's do it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, Scott. Well, we'll see you in a few days then. Go practice a couple of days this way and see if it starts giving you benefit.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, I didn't go that far. Let us say enthusiastic, and we'll talk about that too. The difference between being excited and being enthusiastic.
Yeah, well, I'm enthusiastic. Yeah, I use the word excited pretty loosely, but
Okay, we'll see you then.
yeah, thank you so much.
Enjoy the moment. You've got one.
Yeah. Bye.